Hello, friends, wherever you are. Welcome to Let's Talk with Pastor Ngwaru show. In this particular show, we discuss marriage, we discuss family, we discuss life issues. We discuss life issues, business, economy. We also deal with leadership development. We cover spirituality and religion. It is just like your one-stop shop. You get everything here. And we are like a community. We bring experts from various lines of expertise to come to speak to us so that we can all learn. And by the way, friends, I want to quickly let you know that this channel, where you are tuned in right now, is designed for learning so that at the end of the day, we know how to run our lives better. We know how to engage with each other. We know how systems operate. We are not here to fight. We are not here to do any other thing apart from learning how to run our continent, Africa, better, our marriages better, how to do our politics better, our leadership better. That's exactly what we are doing here. And for this particular week today, we are looking at the church's response to political issues. Church's response to political issues. That's exactly what we are looking at. And you'll discover from my panelists that I do have theologians, I do have political scientists. We are going to be joined later on with lawyers or advocates, if you may. We are going to have various people helping us. And besides these ones that are appearing on the screen, we are going to have you as viewers. Tonight, we are going to do business rather differently. I would like you to give us a bit of time as a panelist to discuss the topic. But I would like at the end to give you, as viewers, about between 20 to about 30 minutes, where I would like you to ask questions to the panelists, any question. Remember, this is a Freedom Square. On this channel, you are allowed to comment anything that will add to our learning. You are allowed to ask any question that will lead to our learning. That's why this channel is here. And I would like my panelists to be able to introduce themselves in less than a minute each. Basically, what I want from them is who are they and what qualifications bring you here, and what are the your area of engagement in society? What do you do on a day-to-day basis? So let me have Dr. Matema, and I've got Nompumelelo there. And we've got Dr. Showers. A little later, Advocate Mukize is going to join, and Dr. Gift member is going to join if they will be able to do so. Dr. Matema, who are you? What credentials do you hold that we can respect in this discussion?
Thank you, Pastor Ngwaru. Good evening, everybody. So good to be in the place where there is so much stimulation of thinking. Now, I am Zacchaeus Matema. I'm a Christian baptized, and I'm an ordained minister of the gospel. After pastoring the field for some years, I was asked to teach pastors, to develop the pastors. I've been teaching pastors from years before any of you were born, even your fathers, up to now. I'm still teaching pastors. In 2000, after teaching for many years, I was promoted to be the professor of applied theology. And when I taught beyond that, the General Conference asked me to teach leadership at the newly established University, Adventist West of Africa, and I have been a professor there. The GC decided to change the title and say, I'm Professor of Leadership. That's my title right now, and I'm enjoying my work, and I look forward to learning you, and I'll train all of you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Let's go to Pumi over there.
Hi, I am Nompumelelo Runji. I'm currently the founder and CEO of Critical Thinker, which is a consulting firm that specializes in policy research, political analysis, and stakeholder engagement. I have a background in sociology, political science, and human rights from the undergraduate level to master's level. I have a career in research and capacity building, and I've worked in the areas of international criminal law as well as democracy building with a focus on elections and electoral systems. I've taught political science at the University of Pretoria at undergraduate level. I've also worked in the media, and I'm currently a columnist for the Sowetan, where I provide political analysis as well as social commentary on a weekly basis.
There you are, viewers. That's a full house. That's a full house. I need the whole day to kind of learn what she has been telling us about her qualifications. You are welcome. Dr. Matema, welcome. And Pumi, you are quite welcome. Dr. Showers Mawowa. Who is Dr. Showers?
Thank you, Pastor Ngwaru, and good evening, viewers. My name is Showers Mawowa. I am a political economist by training. I've lectured in political science, development studies at undergraduate level in universities. I've also supervised a number of master's and PhD research projects. I am an alumni of the African program on thinking development. I have served in the National Expert Panel of the Open Government Partnership, and currently having previously served in several leadership positions in the church. And maybe for the purposes of this discussion, allow me to mention that some of the viewers may have seen me on SABC as a political analyst. So quite a pleasure and a privilege to be serving as a political analyst on a church platform for the first time. Thank you.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you very much. Another full house. We are happy to have you, Dr. Showers. Our panelists, this is a live show. If you have another gadget that is on that is causing interference with the signal, you may switch it off so that you don't have feedback in the system. And those who are operating behind the scene, if there is any mic or anything that is causing, we may request you that you may deal with that behind the scenes. Otherwise, our viewers will not be able to hear what we are talking about here. I'd seen Advocate Mukize. I'm sure you'll be coming back. But let's get into our discussion right now. Church's response to political issues. I just want to say that those who are my friends, real friends, they phoned me and said, Pastor Ngwaru, are you out of your brains, out of your skin?
Oh.
Why do you want to talk about politics? Why can't you talk about faith, salvation, and going to heaven? Why bring such a controversial issue? Now, tell me, maybe Dr. Showers, what is the politics and what is the politics about politics? Why is it such a sensitive issue and people get so worried about even talking about it? Is it a sacred cow? Do we need politics? That the church really need politics in order to operate?
So thank you. I think that's a very good way to start this conversation. The word politics has often been weighed with negative connotations. You know, there is a joke that if you ask someone, what do you do for a living? And they say, I lie. And then the answer is that this person is a politician. But far from it, you know, politics is really something that, you know, people who are living as a group or a society use as a system of making decisions about power and distribution of resources. So politics is about the acquisition, exercise, and distribution of power within a society or a territory, or what some can call a polity. And this presupposes a social contract between those that are really ruling or governing and those that are being governed about how they should interact and relate to each other. And I must say that politics is necessary to organize the society. And I say this as someone who's a Christian. It's necessary in the context of free will. God could have chosen to preside over all the affairs of men directly, but he allowed men to govern themselves. So particularly in a context of ours where we are not a theocracy, we're a plural and a secular society, you have various groups, many interests, conflicting beliefs, and politics becomes, among other things, the mechanisms through which you choose people who lead, but also through which decisions are made for the common good. So in a nutshell, this is how one ought to understand politics, decision-making for a society, power, how it is attained, how it is distributed, and how it is exercised.
I appreciate that very much. That's a broader view, a broader spectrum of defining politics, because to some of us, politics is just carrying a party card and chanting slogans and sometimes beating up the opposition and beating up other people and whatever. No wonder when you say politics, oh, Pastor Ngwaru, why don't you shy away from that? Because it has these negative connotations. Maybe let me find out from Pumi, negative connotations around the word politics, this concept. Why is it such a sensitive thing to talk about?
Well, just to add to what Dr. Shawers was saying, I would actually say that, politics is about ideas as well. Approaches to politics are shaped by political ideologies, and these ideologies provide an intellectual framework that helps us to make sense of the world. So that we don't come to politics neutral. We have a specific worldview, just like when we go into any other space in society. And so political ideology informs the way we interpret concepts like freedom, equality, justice, fairness, power, and authority. And we must remember that political ideologies sit on a continuum, right? We often hear the expression left wing and right wing, right? We hear communism, socialism, liberalism, conservatism, new right, fascism, those kinds of ideologies. Those are the ideas that shape the way people view. So when we come to politics, we come loaded with the way we interpret the world. And that's why it becomes very sensitive to some of us and close to the skin. And we must also remember that for some of us, we view the system as having favored us or having prejudiced us as well. So that's why when we come to politics, it becomes such a very difficult thing to manage, a very sensitive thing to manage. And so even as the church and as church members, as we enter the political fray, we must be very aware, acutely aware of the ideas that we are supporting. And we must understand that as we support a particular view or a proposal from a particular quarter in the political landscape, we must ask ourselves whether it is compatible or in conflict with our personal value system, because we come here with a value system.
Okay. Maybe let me throw it to welcome Advocate Mkize. Maybe you may need to unmute yourself and make your camera a bit stable. It's dangling. We'll appreciate if it can be stable. Thanks a lot. Dr. Matema, why is the word politics such a sensitive word within church circles? It's like we would rather talk about other words that begin with the letter P minus politics. Why is it such a sensitive issue?
Because my professor told me in my formation in undergrad, and I believe politics, like marriage, affects people. We engage in marriage in order to improve our well-being. Politics is supposed to give power to the people to achieve purposes, to become all that they were intended to be.
Yes.
So we are affected very closely, all of us as human beings, by politics.
Yeah.
So that's why we are concerned. If the politics gets dirty, we know that we are in trouble. The politics is clean, we are good. Just like if you are married, like I am happily married, if you marry a rebel, you are in trouble. If you marry a cropper, you thrive, and vice versa.
Okay, no, that's
So
beautiful.
it affects us. That's why we're very much interested. It touches us at the core of our being.
No, that's I really appreciate that. Maybe if I can go back to Pumi, we hear of national agenda, we hear of government policy and stuff like that. Who sets the national agenda, and who is involved in the process of policy formulation? Who are the stakeholders? Is church part of that? Can the church play a role in policy formulation, or we need to distance ourselves as much as we can possibly be?
Well, you see, like Dr. Showers had mentioned, that politics also involves, government, the processes of government, and it has to do with managing and responding to societal pressures and demands. So the national agenda is usually set, the way we understand it, is usually set by political parties. Towards elections, you'll see political parties releasing documents called manifestos. In those manifestos, they will put some policy proposals that they have in mind. And upon those platforms, they go campaign, right? And then the voters, this is particularly in a democratic system, of course, the voters will go and elect a particular political party or a candidate based on the platform, the policy platform that they've presented. And then when that party or that candidate is now in government, the machinery of government takes over. Those proposals or that platform is now translated and developed, right? It becomes a white paper, a green paper, and then it then goes through, it becomes a bill, the legislature then reviews it. So it starts in the cabinet with the president, then and the various ministries that discuss the proposals and whatever. When it has become a bill, it sits now with the legislature in parliament, and it is discussed and it is debated and it is reviewed. Once it is adopted, then it goes to the president for assent. Anywhere in that line, there is opportunity for public consultation, right? And that means stakeholders can come. Sometimes the department, the government department, a specific government department will open up for public comments or submissions. Then in that process, various stakeholders who feel that they have a say or a stake in the policy will come and present. So the church is like any other stakeholder. So stakeholders include civil society, business, communities, other organizations, individuals, interest groups, faith groups, including churches. We can all be involved in the public consultations, whether these are presented by the specific department or at the legislative level where the parliament will open up for submissions. We all have an opportunity to make a representation if we feel that we have a stake, if we feel that the policy being discussed has an impact on us, affects us, or if we want to advocate for certain people and certain groups. And there are other means of participation that we can use as well. There's petitioning, there's protests, there's demonstrations that can be used to put pressure in support of or against an issue. So even as a church and as church members, we may sit and deliberate and say, does something concern us? Does something involve us? Is there something we'd like to say for or against something in society? And depending on that, as part of stakeholders in society, we have an opportunity to make representations.
Let me sharpen that. Pastor, we cannot avoid getting involved. As you are human beings, even if you decide, I'm not going to get involved, that decision is de facto involvement. You are saying,
Yes. Yes.
There I am satisfied. But if you know that we were put in this world in order to improve the quality of life, you
Yeah.
have to be involved, whether you're a churchman or not a churchman, but you have to be involved with intelligence
Yeah.
of knowing what this animal called politics is and what are its objectives. And then as a church, you have to know who you are as a church, know your
Yes.
identity clearly, and then know your mission. What is your mission? Because you're going to interact with this animal that is voted in by the people. You're going to have to achieve your mission in that context, so you cannot be uninvolved. You are there.
Right, Dr. Matema. Maybe let me throw this to Advocate Mkize, if you can help our viewers, including some of us. Pumi is talking of we have the right to protest, to resist, to whatever she mentioned there. These rights to citizens who are being governed and what have you. What's your take on how do we protest as Christians? How do we protest as a church?
Thank you very much, Pastor Ngwaru, and to the fellow panelists. Apologies for technological glitches there.
No, it's okay.
I trust you can hear me well.
Yes.
And I'm quite privileged to be part of this discourse and discussion.
Yes.
The issue of politics and the church is always misconstrued because there's always a belief that the two exist independent of each other, and that the two are actually mutually exclusive. I want to bring in this perspective that says in the book of Matthew, the gospel says, ye are the salt of the earth. And if the salt has lost its flavor, it is good for nothing. Now, the last time I checked, you do not prepare your relish and then put the salt on the side of the relish and hope that through a process of osmosis, the relish will become, flavorable. The two intermingle. And what becomes important in that interplay is that the distinctiveness of salt can still be felt within the relish. Now, this is what the church ought to be doing. That as we mingle with the world, as we are in the world but not of the world, the Gospel of John tells us, we are able to actually bring perspectives, perspectives that are Christ-like, perspectives that are God-like, perspectives that say this is not how power ought to be exercised. This is not how we destroy God's image. This is not how we show a force of power, but through the power of love, which is enshrined in the gospel and in the Bible. This is what we do. Now, the system of politics is so interwoven with the operations and the affairs of the church that, in fact, even our own existence as a church is actually a political statement. In fact, it takes its root there. You would know that there's always been somewhat of a political engagement right from the Garden of Eden and in the creation. We have theocracy. We have theocracy, which is basically the use of governance God's way. And God has always determined the manner in which people should govern themselves. And we've had traditional forms of politics where you've got traditional courts and the chiefs and the rulers and the ndunas, etc. All of those things are part of the discourse that we've always had as a people. And therefore, when we talk of politics, we then talk about the regulatory frameworks that enable us to do that. In constitutional democracies, such as in South Africa, we have the Constitution, for example, that governs the issue of rights, to which individuals, every citizen, including an Adventist, including a Christian, is entitled to by virtue of them being human. And those rights is what Sister Mpumi talks to in terms of the right of assembly, the right of freedom of religion and expression, freedom of belief and conscience, etc., that the state, the people, and no individual should actually interfere with. And that's what actually becomes the marriage, the happy marriage between politics as well as the spiritual realm.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot. Welcome, Dr. Mwemba.
Thank you, Shaw. Sorry for being late.
Yes, on this platform, we don't speak in symbols. We want to speak reality, so that our viewers get properly oriented. I want to appreciate Advocate Mkize for your submission and whatever. But I'm still back to Pumi, and you also touched it, Advocate Mkize, the right to expression, the right to protest. And I'm sure this is why sometimes church leaders may want to shy away even from the word called politics and whatever, especially when we are trying to interpret how do we protest. You know, we have looked in countries in Southern Africa, Eastern Africa, Western Africa, Northern Africa, you go to the Middle East and whatever. When citizens are not happy, they will petrol bomb things, they will just be throwing things in the street, they will just loot shops and whatever. Can Christians express their displeasure to politicians or to the government that way? Is it their right to protest that way?
No, I mean, the law as well as the Constitution does distinguish between violent protests and demonstrations, right? There is a way of protesting.
I want to clarify that.
Yes. There's a legal way of protesting, and that involves obviously being able to picket, being able to walk around, and there's a way that you can do so. You have to apply to certain authorities within the vicinity that you want to do the protest. You have to make sure you've let the law enforcement know. You have to have permission. You don't just go out and protest. There's a way of doing it. And then to speak to the point of whether as churches or church members, we should exercise that right. Again, remember what I said earlier, to say that whenever we are making decisions about how to get involved in politics, we need to ask ourselves whether our actions and whether what we are going to say will conflict or be in line with what we believe, what our value system is, what our faith is. And to go back to what Dr. Matima said, what our mission is as a church. We cannot go outside the scope of what we exist for. And even as we exercise our rights within the scope of the Constitution and within the political system, we always have to ask ourselves the question, as we align to different causes, as we support different positions, are we still in line with our own mission? Are we still in line with our own values and our own faith? That is ultimately what we need to be asking ourselves as we engage in politics and engage in the political system.
That's powerful. I want to bring in Dr. Mwemba there, and what have you. Dr. Mwemba.
Before Mwemba comes in,
yes,
let us be aware that the methodology of achieving the good in order to conscientize the politicians about what is biblical. The methodologies are important. Protest can be violent, which is against the biblical values. So we have to choose the methodologies we use that are biblically undergirded.
So you are basically saying, as an Adventist, as a Catholic, as an Anglican, or basically as a believer, I can protest, but then I need to be informed of the Bible on how to express my protest. Is this what I'm hearing? What do you think?
And also, with your intelligence of the social terrain where you are.
Yes.
Because you know, once people become a mob, there's no thinking anymore. They are just destructive. A mob, M-O-B, is not destructive.
Okay, no, that's fine. I want to come to Dr. Mwemba. He's a psychologist, he's a pastor, he's a publisher, he's an author, he's everything. Others introduce themselves. I want to find out from you, Gift, if we are going to protest against violence against women, and I'm an Adventist pastor, I'm in a crowd of Catholics, of Anglicans, of non-church goers. I'm also carrying a placard that says no to violence against women, anti-gender protest, and what have you. Is that okay?
Well, when you look at the nature, maybe let me start with a person.
Yes.
You are going to protest, you are asking governments to protect women. That's what you are saying. Let's say you are protesting about that. Yes. First of all, you must first of all understand the premise from which you are departing. Remember, every citizen, before they become a church member, they are state property. You know that.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
They are state property.
Yes.
Because when anyone is born, the first certificate you receive is from government. That's the birth certificate. So you are actually state property.
Yeah.
When you go to protest to government, you are telling government, you are abusing your own property.
Yeah.
Now, will you do that violently, or will you do that with dialogue? Remember, you are not just a social organization. Of course, you are a social group, but you are not just an organization. You have a method of doing things.
Yeah.
And your method of doing things is to say to it, your method of doing things is actually from an ethical point of view.
Yes.
You become the moral conscience of government.
Yes.
If you protest as a church and raise placards, the first thing is, where has the church lost its discipline?
Yeah.
In other words, you actually get questioned on your behavior before they listen to your message.
Yes.
Yes, because they know that as a church, you preach peace. As a church, you preach dialogue. As a church, you preach reconciliation. So if you are coming to tell me not to abuse my own property, don't throw stones at me.
Okay.
Come and engage me on a dialogue, not in a placard in the street.
Right. Let me move with our time here. I don't know if I'm putting all of you on the spot, but find your way of dealing with the spot if I'm putting you on the spot. When we look into history, you look at political history, church history, you look at economic history and all those things. Today's church, how does history inform us on how to deal with politics? Are there any lessons? Because right now, you will know, I think all of you are aware, we now have a situation where we are shooting government from the pulpits. You'll then attack that political party from the pulpit, will attack this political party from the pulpit, and whatever and what have you. I want to find out whether history is a way of assisting us on our political expression. What do we learn from history, corporately or as individuals?
If I may give it the first step, I like the last part of your question.
Yes.
Corporately or as individual, because quite often when we reflect on what the role of the church should be vis-a-vis the politics of the day, we have not always been careful, at least in the present discourse. We have not been careful to distinguish between church as an institution and church as individuals. I think going back to the analog that Advocate Mkhize put about salt, being salt of the earth, I think often it's lost to us that when salt does its function as salt, you don't throw a bag of salt into the pot. You take a few grains of salt and then throw into the pot. So there is a conversation to be made about the role of individual members, which sometimes when we look back, we can then generalize and say that the church has done this. So if you look at the different epochs of the church, there is a pattern that I seem to see, perhaps not as conclusive, but there is a pattern. So for example, the Old Testament church, you actually not prominent individuals. So if you have an individual like Daniel who was prominent in the politics of the day, he was there as an individual. There was no priestly council that set and deployed Daniel. So those patterns and distinctions are quite important. And then when you look at the time of Jesus Christ, it's also interesting for me that Jesus was very critical in terms of his open rebuke and condemnation at the religious establishment. And of course, one could understand that because Jesus presides over a heavenly kingdom. So he directed his most vociferous critique at the religious establishment of the time. But what is interesting for me is that who killed Jesus? It was the religious establishment working together with the political establishment. So Jesus may not have necessarily directly condemned the political establishment of the day, but through the value proposition that he was proposing, it inevitably unsettled the political status quo. Hence, they came together with the religious establishment to persecute Jesus. And you can see a similar pattern even in the apostolic church. And when you look at the church pre-Constantine, actually adopted a very much similar pattern where you see the church almost sticking to a particular lane, which is presenting an alternative value proposition, a set of beliefs that people can live. But in living Christianity in its truest sense, the church then inevitably ended up in conflict with the political establishment. So similar to Jesus being killed, you also see, the time of the Dark Ages. Again, a political establishment coming together again with a religious establishment. Persecuting the church. So there are these patterns that I see. But in all this, I think it's important for us to look at what the church actually did as an institution, which at times is very difficult to find. You actually start to see the church acting politically as an institution post-Constantine era, where see, at times religious wars, the Westphalia Treaty was actually a product of, we often look at it in political science as what heralded the modern state and the political organization that we now talk about. But that conflict also included a religious dimension where the church and the politics at that time were working together, which ushered in the modern day state. But I think those distinctions are important so that we can draw clear lessons that are historical and avoid overgeneralizing.
Right, we have lost you there, Doctor. You need to work on your link there. We have lost you there. I'm here.
May I come in?
Yeah, please. Come in. We are looking at how today's church gets informed by yesterday's church and yesterday's history in order to interpret what happens today.
Yeah, if we look at the history, we have models of what the people decided to do.
Yeah.
He has rightly summarized what the early church did, what Jesus did, and what the people did during medieval time. Now we are in the era where we say we're in a democracy. This has come a long way. It has evolved from that time when people were saying, well, only what the Bible says, what God says, that is church people. And then they interacted with people. When Constantine comes in, something dangerous crept in that we should watch for, or to learn lessons. Because Constantine made it easy for the church to come together with the civil authorities or powers. And the one man I admire who wrote a book on Christ and culture said, when religion gains political power, it becomes a beast, B-E-A-S-T. So we have been a beast for many years since politics and the church came together. And we learned lessons the hard way. The people who moved west from Europe started and realized that no, church and politics cannot go together. Separate these. The Constitution of the United States of America is constructed in a way to show that there should be separation of powers. And we don't even understand that there is history behind it. Now, when we understand those issues, that led Americans to make that decision. And we ask ourselves, what can we do today? Because we are still facing the same issues. That's what people face. Unfortunately, you see, the same Americans going back to try to unite the church and state again. And we are here trying to find our way, our developmental path. We also are making their mistakes. So we need to be very clear in our thinking so that our involvement is not only intelligent, but also responsible.
Okay, I don't know down there if
yes, I wanted to add, yes.
Yes.
I just wanted to come in there and say we've got to also recognize that the freedom of conscience, as Dr. Masima is, I think, alluding to, and what we now talk about religious liberty also has a history that is connected to that debate around whether there should be unity between state and church. Whenever a religious body now assumes the power of the state, it has the danger of imposing on individuals a faith that is not of their choosing. And that is problematic. That is the problem with the unity of state and church. So we may think because we are Christian, because we believe in the kingdom of God, and because the kingdom of God is the right kingdom, that it would be logical that the church and the state should be united because everybody should believe in our God. But we don't serve a God like that. Our God respects the freedom of choice. He wants to be worshipped out of choice. Individuals must be able to have the freedom to choose who they want to worship and how they want to worship. And that's why that separation is important. Now, to go back to a point that Dr. Showers was making, to say, you must distinguish between the institutional responsibility to act and the members' responsibility to act. As Christians, we are placed in different places. We talk about brighten the corner where you are. We have been put in places so that we can use our influence in those places. Some of us work side by side politicians in halls of government. We can speak to those people. And based on being the salt, we are the salt, right? As we mingle with them, we may have an influence on them. Some of us find ourselves in the community lower down there. We are together with community members who are struggling with real problems on a daily basis. We have an opportunity there to mingle with them, to understand their needs, and to work together to influence a better outcome. So we must understand that we have agency. God has placed us as Christians so that we can use our influence. And then when we come together corporately as children of God, there again, we are able to work together to say, how is it that we can equip ourselves so that we can be of benefit to the community, even as we mingle with the community?
Okay, thank you for that, Pumi. Let me go to Advocate Mkize and gift member there. Should governments account to the people? Should they be held accountable to the people? Are there mechanisms for holding government politicians accountable? Does the church have anything to do with holding our state accountable? Any one of you?
Let me start first. The advocate will come later.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. The issue of accountability.
Yes. You know, I think in my understanding, when I think of politics, the government or politicians have the same objective with the church.
Okay. Come
government
home.
Is there to take care of its people, its citizens. It's only that they don't call them church members, they call them citizens.
Okay.
But they want to provide. Because if a person violates me, government state will step in because I am state property.
Yes.
If I don't have money to hire a lawyer, government will give a government lawyer. Why is it doing that? It is protecting its citizens.
Yeah.
The church, on the other hand, has the same objective.
Yeah.
To protect people. They don't call them citizens, they call them church members.
They call them church members, yeah.
Yes. As church members, they are brought together by a set of beliefs.
Yes.
As citizens, they are brought together by the Constitution.
By the Constitution, yes.
Yes. Now, there are different methods of applying these objectives or this care.
Yes.
All right? Now, remember, government is bigger than the church.
Exactly.
Yes. Government creates the environment
for the church to operate.
For church to exercise its religious liberty. Government does that. That's a government responsibility. Secondly, government will regulate when religions begin to fight.
Okay.
Because religions are not perfect.
Yeah.
There are some whose religious beliefs conflict with other groups. It is government who sets in and says, no, as my children, as my citizens, not my church members, as my citizens, these are the religious liberties I have.
Okay.
Now, when it comes to holding a government accountable, let me quickly, government accountable. The church may not use government methods. Church may use government structures.
Okay.
All right. If you look at the church in South Africa, look at the COVID issue. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
COVID, the government respected bodies within its sphere.
Yeah.
They consulted chiefs as chiefs, traditional leaders.
Yeah.
They consulted the political parties as political parties. Why? Because each group has its own method of addressing a government.
Yes.
They consulted religious leaders.
Okay.
The president sat down in a dialogue, no placard, to say, this is how we want you to do it. So I am saying, government structures for each group to engage them. So government expects its people to bring in the check and the balances. You mentioned something, going onto the pulpit and scandalizing government. That's wrong. That's disrespectful. When government wants to listen to a church body, government will accept an appointment to say, we as the Seventh-day Adventist Church, we would like to meet the president. The president will say, come, let's sit together, call a few ministers, and they will respond to your concern.
You have touched something there, Gift. I don't know if you understand what you have said there as I transit to Advocate Mkize there. As Seventh-day Adventist, picking from what Gift is saying, are we able to send an invoice to maybe President Ramaphosa, President Mnangagwa, President whatever of any country, or Trump, and be able to say, look, in this situation, we are doing advocacy. Our women are being killed on a daily basis, and would like to propose some, if you may look at things from this angle. Should we be afraid to do that, or just leave that to politicians?
Look, I think it would be reckless of a church to operate as if all that matters is the streets of gold. All that matters is 12 gates into the city. All that matters is 1,000 years, you know, the millennium and all of those things, and check its responsibility of occupying till he comes. You see, one of the fundamental issues that come to us in the story of the Good Samaritan is the demonstration how the church ought not to behave. You see, when we keep silent in the face of injustices as a church, we become complicit to injustices. We become the priest, we become the Levite that looks and sees and passes by and leaves the man wounded by the street side of Jericho. This is what we become as a church. And when we do that, what Jesus was demonstrating with that parable was actually saying, when you do that as a church, you actually become irrelevant. You become guilty of existential irrelevance. There is no more need for your existence, because what's the point of having you as a church and the people are lying by the roadside wounded, and you do not have means of intervening? You do not have the oil to wash them, and the bandage, and the donkey to take them to the inn. This is what you have been called to become. You've been called to become a true neighbor, even to those that may in fact look like they are strangers to you, even if you do not believe in their political persuasion, even if they wear things that do not accord with your own colors. You still have a responsibility as a church to bandage them when they actually fall prey to the robbers by the wayside. And therefore, the system of accountability, the church, in fact, is supposed to ensure that anything and everything that talks to issues of welfare, that talks to issues of good governance, that talks to issues of protection of citizens, that talks to the issue of advancement for opportunities of citizens, and ensuring that they actually thrive in a platform and in a societal setting that enables them to pursue those opportunities without hindrance and without any reprisals, is a responsibility and a call to the church. The politicians are there to actually create an environment where the church will be able to perform those duties. Because in the absence of that, then we are as good as non-existent. And therefore, the systems of accountability apply to us first as the church. We have a duty to bandage those souls that are dying by the roadside. Not only do we have that duty, but also to call government to systems of accountability. And this country, South Africa, for example, has got a number of systems of accountability in the form of Chapter 9 institutions, in the form of legislative frameworks, the Public Finance Management Act in the public sector, the Municipal Finance Management Act in the municipal environment, etc. All of those are pieces of legislation that are set up in order to call for accountability. And the question is, why should we actually defer those responsibilities to AfriForum, to OUTA, to a whole host of other NPOs and NGOs who do not know the Christ that we know, instead of us being the light that should actually call upon government to realize its limitations and its fault and create an environment where citizens will basically say that I have seen Jesus live in my doorstep.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah,
let me hold you, friends. Let me hold you. I see Pumi, I see your hand. Gift, I see your hand. I made a promise to viewers that we are going to look at their questions. We are going to give them 20 to 30 minutes. I promised that. We are going to be coming in as much as we are addressing what the viewers have posted. And if the technical team can start scrolling the items of viewers, we want to look at their questions and comments. But Pumi and Gift, 1 minute each, please. What are you trying to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to. Oh, okay. Sorry, Dr. Mike. Yes, I just wanted to add that we must understand that accountability is not only important when we are seeing the government to be failing, right? Accountability has to do with being answerable and responsive. It's about government giving account to its citizens, giving explanations, giving justifications for decisions and for actions. So meaning regularly government must report on certain things, even when it's doing well. We must be interested. We must engage in reading those reports. We must engage in what the president is saying when he stands up and he makes a speech, because it's an opportunity for us to hear what those who are there to serve us are actually doing. Accountability doesn't only come in when we feel disgruntled and we feel we have grievances. We have a responsibility to take note of what is happening in our society. And so I just to emphasize the point that there are different levels of accountability. I just also want to add there's the vertical accountability where citizens can express themselves and hold government to account. When they've heard the explanations, they can then decide if they want. Yeah. So that's what I wanted to say, just to underscore that point.
I really appreciate that. Gift, what is it that you want to say?
Yeah, I want to say, let me bring it home to the church, to the church. I like what Pumi has said. You know, as Seventh-day Adventist Church, our problem is that we have buried our head in the sand. You know why? Because we have a transit mentality. We have moved from occupying life. We are in the departure lounge of life.
Yeah.
We are in the departure lounge. We want to go. But listen, there is a world that we want.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is, there is a world where we exist right now.
Exactly, yes.
And it is actually reckless for one to just wake up because you are disgruntled. Now you start toying. If you have had the good dialogue and engagement all along, government will listen to you. You won't need to go to the streets. The problem we have is that we are fine until our toes are stepped on. And it's simply because of the transit mentality. Remember, before you become a church member, you have a citizenry duty.
Okay, no, thanks a lot. Dr. Showers, I saw like you want to talk, but those who are behind the scenes, our technicians, please, may you bring the questions for our viewers and their comments. We want them to know that we are addressing them. Right? Gentlemen and lady, I want us to conclude on party politics and the party ideology and how the church fits in a party ideology and party politics. What are the what do you call them? The red flags and stuff like that. But I've got Joseph Jumo there, and he's saying, as long as the church is the representative of people, then we have taken in the national dialogue. No excuse. Any comment to that, please? Just half a second to comment on that. Do we agree with what he's saying?
That's what we are saying, Mike, to say, before you become a church member, you are a citizen.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Then we'll go to Google.
Nompumelo used the big word there, influence.
Influence, yes.
That's where the church must zero in on that. That is authentic leadership influence.
Okay,
what
thank you.
You gained from your connectedness with God must spread horizontal to the people. That is the way to achieve it.
I get that. Let's go to Sandile Keko. I think he's from Swaziland. He's a buddy of mine, and he says, I agree that the church is de facto involved in politics. However, the greatest value of the church involvement is to champion and protect religious liberty. This is critical to us as Adventists. Dr. Mkize, any reflection on that?
Well, I mean, for me, thank you for promoting me to a doctor. I'm not there yet.
Yeah, but it's a prophecy.
Yes, that's a nice prophecy, Pastor Ngwaru. But here's the point, and I think this is where we sometimes miss it. You see, the church is not only about promoting freedom of expression. Yes. It is not only about religious liberty per se. That's part of the founding principles and values that we should protect and jealously guard as a church. Yes. But I think it is Dr. Luke who says, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me to preach the gospel to the poor and to liberate those that are oppressed. Yes. Now that is the role of the church, to actually ensure that the strings of bondage and things that put people down, those things are actually dealt with effectively, and through influence, through social discourse, through mobilization, and through engagement with the powers. This is what, and modeling what God's kingdom on earth should be like.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Advocate. I have Shepherd Mupofu there, and he's saying protest is born out of a broken social contract, and there's no way you can protest within the parameters set by oppressive system. When God protested, he disrupted the status quo. Now, let me beef it up and say, operating under a dictatorship and operating under a democracy, given the question that is, the comment that is there, Dr. Showers, democracy, dictatorship, and the breakdown of engagement and communication between the state and the people. How does the church operate in a dictatorship and in a democracy?
Yeah, you see, for me, I think, this conversation at the end of the day requires some kind of a framework. And go back to my question about what do we mean when we say the church. And are we saying the church should sit, should the church board sit and issue out a statement on particular human rights issues? That is the question. And I think, as much as there are things that we feel strongly as a church, that the governments must act or respond in a particular way, particularly when we go beyond issues of religious liberty. Remember, religious liberty is how we argue for our right to exist as a church, so that we can advance our mission. But the moment we go beyond the parameters of religious liberty, there are some latent risks that we have to deal with. So, for example, the whole notion of pluralism and separation of state and religion is such that you don't have one belief system imposing its ideas through government. And sometimes it can be very tricky, because let's say the government then decides to listen to us. What happens to other religious views? There is a book of interest which is titled "The Human Right to Know to Preach Jesus." And what's interesting for me, talking about dictatorial settings and non-dictatorial settings, is that as much as we want to focus on dictatorial settings, you actually find that the question of religious liberty is also threatened even in the so-called democracies. At this point, you have something that is akin to a tyrant of ideas.
Okay.
You cannot say certain things on Twitter. If you look at how politics has encroached into the idea of marriage, it inevitably clashes with our standpoint. But we are talking of a democracy here. So sometimes the dividing lines, particularly when you look at the role of ideologies in advancing different political systems, you actually realize that, as Mpumi says, this is like a continuum informed by different ideologies. And I think as a church, for me, it's most important for us to assert our right as the right to exist. And I think a framework that is useful is one that looks at a church as an institution, but you also then have another sphere, which is the individual sphere. And then you have the group sphere. We are talking about the church and church members as if we are only church members, but we are also citizens. What stops us from advancing human rights issues and these other issues through our groups and societies, through our agents as individuals? Because a citizen, the concept of citizenship entails an obligation and rights and duties. And one of the duties of a citizen is to participate in a political system. So we are not short of mechanisms of engaging the government. And I think this, if we explore the different mechanisms, then we do not need to force the church to take certain risks that could create problems in the future.
Oh, okay. We are hearing that Tafadzwa Chinoda Kufa. I think we have just been dealing with the comment that you are putting there, operating in a dictatorship, operating in a democracy, and Dr. Showers, thank you for your insights.
Can I come in there? Yes. I just wanted to come in and say that I think, again, if we go back also to the mission of the church is relevant regardless of the political system, because we exist to advance the kingdom of God. Whether we are existing in a democracy, whether the church is existing in an Islamic state, whatever, but the church's mission remains the same. It doesn't change based on context. And we must actually realize that. And I think then when we then talk about, so what must the church advocate? What is the thread that should run through what we do in all these different systems? I think it's to emphasize that we need to be advocating for people's freedom to have a choice, right? Our role as a church and church members is not to condemn and oppose. It is to persuade. And if we want to persuade and appeal to people's reason, we need to advocate for people to have the right to choose, to have the right to make a choice, even to be persuaded by us. And I think that's a very important point to make. Religious liberty is not just about protecting our freedom to believe what we want to believe. It's also protecting the rights even of those who don't believe what we believe, so that they can be persuaded one day to believe as we believe.
Thank you. Professor. Okay, I see advocate and gift there. I have Professor Namo there. Let's quickly address in a nutshell. Can an Adventist be an active member of a political party to the extent of running for president? Who is this? Ben Carson in the United States. If he had made it through the primaries, we could actually be having an Adventist as president of the United States. Wow. I'm sure. Would that be great? Would that be great? Maybe advocate and gift, as you bring your issues, can you also reflect on the Namo's question and also bring your own? Let's do it in a nutshell. Our time is moving.
Okay, advocate, you will answer that question. I can't handle that, but here's my point.
Yes.
My point is this. You know, government has what we call hard power. Government has hard power. Government has the ability to coerce and force when necessary. The church has soft power.
Yes.
And we call it just influence, like the soft power. But
soft power, yes.
Yeah, it becomes a problem when the church assumes the hard power by going into the streets and doing other strange things. But one of the roles of the church, where we collaborate with the government, remember we are saying government and church have one target in person, and that is the individual. And I said government calls them citizens, we call them church members. But the point is this, that it is the role of the church to nurture the citizens of that country.
Yes.
It is the role of the church to make individuals, citizens, good citizens. That's why the church becomes the moral conscience of the government. However,
okay, thanks.
Not rule, because if you as Adventists were to run the South African government, we will close all the shops on Saturday. We cannot rule a government. We are not eligible. We will dysfunction. So when we talk of religious liberty, we are saying public good, choose what you want. But we cannot impose our doctrinal beliefs on the government. No, we cannot. This government will collapse.
Okay, no, that's fine. Are you at home? You don't need it. Maybe this is rhetoric. The South African government then says we are decriminalizing adultery. If your wife is caught in adultery, that's no crime at all. Tough luck on you and whatever. And as Adventists were at home with that. Is this what you are saying? And whatever, we should reserve that. Government has a right to enact laws. Advocate Mkize, please help us. Can you answer?
Professor Namu,
just let me hold you there. Dr. Matema, let me hold you there. Dr. Matema, let me hold you. Let me hold you. I want to protect
answer him.
I want to protect Professor Namu.
Politician.
I want to protect Professor Namu. Professor Namu says, can an Adventist or a Christian, or maybe less, like he puts it, how does he say it? Can Adventists be an active member of a political party to the extent of running for president? Can you answer that and go to your own statement, Dr. Mkize? Or maybe if you don't have answer to Professor Namu, we can give it to Dr. Matema.
Thank you. Let me just deal with these two quick issues. The church must never be government, and neither should government be the church. The whole concept of a doctrine of separation of powers is very instructive and very helpful. And we need to maintain that healthy balance. Now, Dr. Showers speaks of, and his input, in fact, is similar to what Professor Namo is actually raising. So as a church, do we now advocate and stand up and say certain things, etc., that might, in fact, even perpetrate and propagate certain jaundiced views from our point as Christians? Now here is what really I would advocate for, and it aligns with what Sister Mpumi was saying, and that is that there are certain common principles, and the best reference point for this is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1948. When you look at that document, it puts every human being together. It ties them in cords of humanity. And it is based on fundamental principles of freedom, of choice, of protection, and of basically protection against abuse and repression and all of those kind of issues. There is consistency in those principles with that which the Bible pronounces. So if you are advancing a particular point based on universally accepted principles of humanity, which are consistent with the biblical teachings from where we are sitting, and I say the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is one such document, which basically advances that cause, and come to Bill of Rights in South Africa and the Constitution in 1996, you are basically talking about the same thing. Now, the other point, which is very important, is Daniel is called in the palace.
Come again?
Daniel is called in the palace when he is absent from the banquet, right? And the reason he's being called, it's simply because, number one, he is absent from confusion. Reason number two is that there is history about him intervening whenever there was a crisis. Now, the question that I raise to someone who says, well, let's stay aloof, let us be uninvolved as a church, who is going to call us when the crisis hits? Who is going to say we need a voice of reason? And the voice of reason was heard during the days of the Adventist church, when the Adventist church was propagating and intervening in the issues that affected the nation. Now, we are not going to be called. It is only Daniel who was called because of the history that the government had with him of the time. And therefore, we need to have established a history so that we can be called.
Powerful. Dr. Matema, now we want to wind up. Dr. Matema, you'll be the last speaker there, and then I'll ask you guys to summarize. Dr. Matema, your take.
I heard something very nice from our learned brother, Advocate
Mkize, yes.
The development of thinking of the people that was expressed through the 1948 United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. That document, if you look at it, is a manifestation of serious thinking about what it takes for us as human beings to work together to give one another opportunities to become all that we can become.
Yes.
So the church is supposed to be representing God. The God who has revealed himself as we read about him. We find that all these ideas, including this thing, others have come up with global ethic, global business standard, codex, core principles, what have you. They are only catching up with what God had already revealed.
Okay.
And we as the church were supposed to be in the forefront in making this world aware of where God wants people to go without getting into their methodologies of doing things which are usually very corrupt.
Yes.
So, if this is my last speech, let me say we have to be intelligent citizens, even though we're church members.
Yeah.
And we must be drivers, not hitchhikers.
Yes.
And we must also be responsible citizens if we are the authentic church. If this is my last word, I don't want to go away without saying.
Okay, thank you. I noticed on the chat line, let me just read the last one. You may not comment, but we want you to know that we have read it. We have a talker. We saying Professor Namu asked about Adventist presidents. President George Conrad of Fiji is a Seventh-day Adventist. What are your thoughts? I'm sure Advocate Mkize has already answered that, and others and whatever. We'll leave it to a personal conscience to see. But as a church, we cannot have a statement in terms of whether you can be a president or not. Dr. Mkize, in half a line, what do you think about what I'm saying?
Well, I think you're correct, Pastor. The point, though, really is to say, if you become a party politician and you then become one that actually destroys the existence of others, then there's a problem. But if you are able to maintain the element of neutrality that is going to create systems of equivalence with everyone and without any distinction or favor, then I think you are in the right space. You can actually do that. But the challenge is if I stand up and I advocate for my party within the church context, then there is a problem. Because there is an IFP, there is EFF, there is all sorts of things. and we need to guard against a party political.
Okay, sorry, we are losing you there.
Supposed to be calling upon unity, and if we're able to maintain, the ability to be objective and to be uniting in our approach, there is no issue.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. We have the last line I'm going to read from the viewers. Oh, it has just disappeared. I was going to read it. Kindly consider Facebook in your next presentation. Thank you for such a mind-opening discussion. We have heard you, is it Tafadzwa? We'll look at that. Elizabeth Ngwaru. Thank you, advocate, for that clarification. You make us have a better understanding position of the church and what have you. We really appreciate everyone for the insights you have given. Right, 30 seconds each, and if you, I pray, don't elaborate. In just 30 seconds, in this whole discussion that we have had, what do you want the viewer to go home with, Dr. Matema? What is the carry-home message for the viewer? What do you want them to take home in one line? As we wrap it up.
My one line is that the Church of God must rise up to be true to its own identity, and do everything that God has revealed to it to achieve the mission that God has given to it. Anything that raises or uplifts the foundational values of being human, that belongs to God and the church must be in the forefront of enhancing that.
Okay, thanks a lot. Dr. Showers, what do you want our viewers to sleep thinking of? What is their take-home message?
Well, I want to say that indeed the church does have a role to play within society. We have only discussed the politics as one of those spheres. And having said that, what we should be able to do is to see the church members being active, because the church is not an abstract institution. And it's the members of the church who represent the church within the society. So in that sense, yes, the church does have a role, and we are agreed on that. And what we need to look at is the methodologies of the church's engagement as individuals, as groups, and as an institution.
Okay, thanks a lot. Advocate Mukize, your take-home message?
The church must be apolitically political. Apolitically political. Because when we say the church is apolitical, we are saying it is not interested in partisan political lines. It is involved in politics of humankind, in politics of justice, in politics of fairness, in politics of uplifting the downtrodden. Then the church is truly a relevant institution. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you. Our only lady, Pumi.
The church and government are united by one purpose, and that is to defend and advance the inherent dignity, value, and choice of every human being. And to the extent that that is what we are doing when we are engaging in politics, whether as a member, I choose to become a member of a political party, whether I feel God is calling me to stand for president, ultimately, as I lead, I must remember that it is my duty to advance and defend the value, dignity, and choice of every person, economically, politically, spiritually, religiously. That is my responsibility, and that's what I need to be supporting.
Okay, appreciate that. Dr. Mwemba, your last message to the viewers?
my comment is that as much as you are preparing to go to heaven, remember that you live on earth. You have breakfast, lunch, and supper, and you live under a constitution, and you're advancing the kingdom of God under a government. So cooperate with the ruling powers. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I don't know. I want to exercise the liberty that I have as your moderator to also sum in one line what I have heard all of you say. I don't know whether it will be representative of what you have said, but this is how I also have understood something that I will sleep over and celebrate, and that is the best way to protest against corruption is for a church not to be corrupt. Don't be corrupt. If you want to make a statement against corruption, don't go to the pulpit and dance and shout at people. At borders, be the one who declares everything. In your office of accounts as an Adventist, your books must be balanced because you are God's child. If you are a Methodist, represent your God in the values that you are taught by your church. The church needs to make statements through its life. Of course, we may basically make verbal statements, but I think a message that is lived is much better and greater than just the spoken word. Thank you, every one of our panelists. I'm seeing messages there that are saying an educative program, we have benefited and whatever. Those of you who felt like it should have been on Facebook and whatever, we are going to look at that and what have you. I'm happy tonight, at least our viewers, you can celebrate that we were able to engage you. We gave you all the time. We want to say good night and thank you to our panelists. We also want to thank you very much for your time. I know this is late in the night, but you are willing to be with us up to the very end. May the Lord bless you. The Lord willing, will continue with
Jesus said, as the Father sent me, so I send you.
Amen. Thank you. We are going to continue to bring topical issues, including follow-up. I've received some people saying, let's have a follow-up discussion to that one. We are going to do that. Please remember to subscribe to this platform. Let's make this ministry bigger. Let's make this platform bigger and share whatever you can from what we have heard. Thank you and good night, viewers. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.